It's very nice to be back, I've got to say, and I've been looking forward to catching up with you all and having another deep dive into, well, kind of what I'm thinking is beyond anxiety and depression. You know, part 2, hopefully a lot more interactive, and hopefully you've all come along with some questions and some doubts and some sticking points and some insights that we can share together. So probably the main prerequisite for this course is you have to have some problems to come along. So we've got something to work with, something to really get our teeth into. And probably as a preamble, you know, this course is based on Buddhist psychology, and Buddhist psychology is radical. It's there are nowadays a lot of parallels with our Western kind of canon of psychological insight and treatments, but Buddhist psychology goes much further and actually is almost unthinkable from a Western point of view, mainly because the aim of Buddhist psychology is nothing less than the complete and utter cessation, the cessation of all problems and their causes. So that is a far greater goal than just learning to live with our problems. And if we have the courage to incorporate that goal, to at least intellectually understand how this is possible, that it is possible to completely remove our suffering and all of the causes of suffering, then we'll get everything in between, including learning to live with it and our day-to-day, step-by-step progress. And it is a bit of a balance, because we've got to have the big picture, and then we also have to have the confidence to just go along day by day, bit by bit, without getting overwhelmed. But if we understand why it's possible, we'll have that energy to actually keep going and transform our life. So get ready to kind of immerse yourself into a complete paradigm shift that is Buddhist psychology. Even though a lot of the concepts might be familiar to us, I think the biggest thing is the change of attitude. That's what's really radical with Buddhist psychology. And then we can use all of the amazing techniques and things that we find in self-help books, and also you know, from our friends, from our own insights, from science. So part of the aims of this course is to be able to figure out how to have love without attachment, how to have to just be upset without getting angry, how to have confidence without implied criticism, without intimidating other people, and I suppose also how to be a learner without fear, without shyness. So, you know, we have an experience of all of these things. How do we navigate our way through? Part of the preparation of the course, if you can, is to have a look at the first course that I led, because that was like really intense. There was a whole lot of theory and the whole new paradigm of Buddhist psychology. So it's good to kind of blast yourself with that, and then come along to these sessions with your questions, because I'm really hoping that we can have a lot of discussion as we go through. So I've got a couple of just short recap presentations for each class, but then I wanted to go through some of the questions in the reflection sheets just to get us started, and any other questions of yours. And then the end of the class, we'll have a meditation. So one of those meditations that came along with the notes as well, or at least based on one of those meditations. Part of the reason of doing those reflection sheets is that it's kind of like where the rubber hits the road, because I found in my own experience that you can listen to things, you go, oh, yeah, that makes sense. But the moment you try and put it into practice, it's like the whole thing dissolves, well, it does for me, into a mush. And just getting started on capturing your experience in words, it's difficult. That's why I've only put a couple of lines for each sheet. But what it does is it helps us bring clarity. All of that effort brings clarity to our experience, and that's the way that we can bring forth our innate wisdom and how we can develop it and get really strong at this whole how to do life business, and also how far it can take us, which from a Buddhist point of view is all the way to complete liberation and enlightenment. So let's get started with just a short meditation to settle our focus and kind of set our purpose for today. So settling body and mind. It's good to have whatever you do in life bookended with a beginning and an end. And that's what determines the quality of the middle. And many of our Western teachers have said Westerners are terrible at being able to relax. So we just go into things all tense and uptight and gung-ho, and everything just kind of bounces off us because we're so uptight. So part of beginning anything is to actually relax. So getting the posture right, the main thing, to straighten your spine, but not in an artificial way, but thinking that each vertebrae, it's like a pile of coins, one on top of the other, so that each vertebrae in your back is supporting the one above it, one by one by one. So your back becomes like a stable column, and it carries the weight of your body. It keeps your body upright. So make any adjustments that you need, that you're not tipping one way or the other. You might need to sit back in your seat. Just tuck the chin in a little bit. And once you can feel that column of your spine supporting your body, then let your shoulders drop and let go of any tension from the shoulders, from the neck and the shoulders. Just feel it running off the tips of the shoulders. Let your arms be relaxed, hands in the lap if it's comfortable, or on your knees. Gently bring your focus to the breath. Just become aware, anchor your attention on the breath, the feeling of the breath coming in and going out. You don't need to change your breathing, just become aware of it. Maybe notice the quality of your breathing. You might naturally start to adjust. So have about 80% of your attention on the breath and the 20% just relaxing. So you're just gently anchoring your focus on the breath, the rolling rhythm of the breathing. And as you do this, you might notice that there's a lot of racket going on inside your head. So just let those thoughts come to rest, just like after the wind stops, the autumn leaves eventually all come to rest. So if you notice a thought, just note, oh, it's a thought, and let it go. As you're following the breath, if you notice a feeling, note that's what it is. It's an emotional sensation, and let it go. There might be memories from from the day or from yesterday echoing in your mind. You can also just let them come to rest. If they're really important, they'll be there later. It's okay, you can let them go. And just like your body is still and seated comfortably in your room, so too is your mind coming to rest, just anchored on the breath. And into this spaciousness, then we can feel that we're happy to be here, ready to engage in this class. You can bring to mind what your purpose is, what it was that got you to the class today. So that is our connection to our day-to-day life, to make it personal and meaningful for us now. But we also need to connect to what our potential is, where we're going. And so for this, we can take refuge, meaning that we recognize that it is possible. It is possible to completely overcome anxiety, depression, and all unhappy states of mind. And that there are countless people who've done this. And the one that we're relying on is the Buddha and his insight into our psychology. So you can think that the Buddha arises there in the space in front of you, golden, radiant, seeing you exactly for who you are, with infinite love, compassion, and care for you and all beings. Recollect that us and all living beings, all we want is to avoid suffering and equally want to be happy, but we all lack genuine happiness. And so we're going to take refuge in the external Buddha, the one who's gone before and shown us a way to become free. And also recognizing that this too is our potential. So we can think, I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. And think how wonderful that would be if we could not just save ourselves, but be able to help all sentient beings who are just like us in the same boat out of their suffering as well. And think that light and nectar flows from the Buddha's heart across space to you, flowing down through you, washing away all your doubts and tiredness, and bringing all realizations and insights. And then when you're ready, you can gently bring your focus back to the room. So I thought I'd do a prayer at the beginning and at the end, just to bookend it nicely and set the tone. It's such a nice tone, and really to connect us with this vast potential that we have. So like I said before, you know, Buddhist psychology has a really radical approach to mental illness. And from a Buddhist point of view, we all have mental illness. That's why we suffer. That's why we have problems. But it's just a spectrum, and some of it's more obvious than others. Sometimes it's manifest, other times it's not. And actually, our experience of suffering, of problems, of when things don't go right, that can actually be a way that we can use our unhappiness and that experience to develop mental health, to develop our compassion, to develop our kindness. And what you might see through this course is that we actually can't develop it unless we have problems, unless we actually go through an experience like this. So we really need the courage to be able to do that, to be able to use our problems. So what propels us often isn't just our own problems, but when we find that there are others around us that we wish we could help and we find that we can't, or we find the suffering of others around us so unbearable and we want to be able to do something. So that can actually become a very strong propelling force. So from a Western point of view, we kind of have a received knowledge that depression and anxiety come from a chemical imbalance in our brain, or they come from external circumstances. And even if we don't overtly subscribe to this, it's just our kind of cultural approach. And just a couple of weeks ago now, maybe a month ago, I read this article on the ABC of how everything that we thought about neurotransmitters in the brain and the causes for depression in particular, and all of the medications for depression, that actually they don't work. And that that whole thing of depression being caused by a chemical imbalance has been just refuted from a scientific neurological point of view. And so this has really set the cat amongst the pigeons, hasn't it? And not only that, but the meds still work, not for everybody, but for some people they do work. So what on earth is going on here? And for other people, of course, when you take the meds, they work for a bit, but then they stop working. So I've been thinking about this, trying to grapple with it. And I think what it is we have in the West a catastrophic confusion between causes and results. We mix them up. And our whole Western approach is like this. And if we turn it around and we look at depression and anxiety as a result of something, that's our ticket, that's our key, rather than a cause. So often in the West, we think depression and anxiety are the cause of our unhappiness. And so then we try and get rid of depression and anxiety, thinking it'll get rid of our unhappiness, but it just doesn't work. So this clearing up the confusion between causes and results, if we look at depression and anxiety as a result of something, then we can start looking, well, what's the cause? And find the root cause, then we can do something about it. So you might be familiar with this slide. In a word, don't shoot the messenger. So a messenger, for instance, when we have back pain, and many of you might have back pain and it's quite debilitating, but the back pain isn't the problem. Even though it may feel so at the time, the back pain is an indicator that something is wrong. And as we know, if you just take painkillers, it doesn't fix anything, does it? It actually creates a whole nother problem. So trying to find the cause of the back pain is what's going to cure it. So we do need to have some painkillers to be able to get through life, but that's not the solution. It just gives us a window of opportunity to keep on going and actually find out what's wrong. On an emotional level, our conscience, when our conscience is pricked, it's painful. It's the pain system of our ethics. It shows we have ethics. When we know we've done something that doesn't sit right with us, even if we've got away with it, it rankles us. And it's not a pleasant sensation, but it's really good that we have it, isn't it? It shows that we have an innate inner sense of ethics. And depression and anxiety are the pain system of the mind. So they're a pain system. They're not the cause. They're the result of something going on deeper that we haven't dealt with. So when we have depression and anxiety, they reveal that something is wrong, and they show us exactly where to work and exactly how we have to do it. Otherwise, we're never going to deal with those root problems. So if we have the courage and then we learn how to listen to our anxiety and our depression, then we can actually remove all of the causes of suffering forever. Not just keep on having to take the painkillers. We can actually achieve the inner peace that we're seeking. And in a way, they can become our friend. Maybe our difficult friend, but our friend. So, as a recap, how are we going? And do you have any questions yet? And did you come with any questions? I've just put it onto gallery view so that I can see you. So you can either wave your hand, or you can lift your virtual hand, or you can just unmute and jump in. Oh yes, so Mary Kota.
So how do you go about tracing the causes of the anxiety and depression that you have? Like, how do you know, like if you've had it for a long time, how do you know where it's coming from?
Yes, so it's probably got quite a few levels of causes, and we have to be able to tease them out. And there isn't just one cause. So just like with back pain, there isn't just one cause. For one person, it might be because they've lifted heavy things in the wrong way. For another person, it might be that they have some kind of bone cancer. Someone else might have a injury from when they were a child. And so if you try and have it as one size fits all, it isn't actually going to help us. So first off, we start with what the symptom is, and then we've got to start digging to see, we've got a checklist to go through how to kind of diagnose for ourselves, going through the checklist. So it's actually a wonderfully leading question, Mary, because my very next slide is, what is this checklist? How to get started on this analysis. And this is advice that came from His Holiness the Dalai Lama when someone asked him in a public talk, you know, what's the cure for depression? And he said, there isn't any one cure, because there isn't just one cause. We've got to be able to trace it back. And so I've put this together also from our Western tradition. Western psychology also goes through this particular checklist. So I'll just put the slide up really briefly so we can see. First off, and we start at the easy end, we look at organic causes. So start at the most obvious external things, because they are going to be having a very immediate effect on us. So it might be things like changes in brain chemistry. So it might be really hormonal, might be postnatal depression. It might be from terrible diet. I had a friend who developed adult diabetes. He was drinking 12 cans of Coke a day. So can you imagine how much sugar and how much sugar rush and then crash over and over again until your whole adrenal system is burnt out. So organically, that can have a huge effect on us. It's not profound, but it has a very marked effect on us. Environment as well. So you might be living in a physically toxic environment. I had friends who were living next door to a smelter's a car body workshop, and they didn't realize that all the smelting fumes were coming in their window. They just thought they were really tired, so they just started at the psychological level, but actually they were being poisoned day by day. It was illegal chimneys that they had there. So, diet, or it could be acquired brain injury. It could be from having a crash. It could be from how we have, our mood is altered if we have a tumor or an aneurysm or all sorts of things. So start there. Look carefully at your environment and your physical organic causes. Then have a look at the events that are taking place now, or major events in the life, you know, a while ago, because a lot of what we call depression or anxiety is actually a very legitimate response to an event. So if you have sustained violence in the home, whether it's physical or if it's emotional abuse, that is going to take its toll. If you are in a position of helplessness, like you just lived through Cyclone Ian, you know, this has a shocking effect on our emotions. It really it's a wake-up call about how helpless we are, how little control we have over life, and you know, very little that we can do, and we may be in a situation where we can't save ourselves or we can't save others. And then major events like the death of a loved one, whether it's a human being or even if it's a pet, and it may be even a year ago, but we still feel it. And other people might say, hurry up already, get over it, but we all take our own time. So don't be ashamed of being stressed or ashamed of being sad. You know, it's a legitimate response to events, and it's something that we can work with to become a better, more compassionate person. But first, we've got to recognize that it's happened. And a deeper layer still, a lot of the cause of our depression or anxiety or stress is powered by destructive habits. So we may have had an initial cause, and now we just re-trigger ourselves, and we've worn this pathway literally in our neurology, in our brain, but also in our emotions. It's our go-to response to things. It's the thing that we come back and ruminate over again and again. We might have learned behavior from when we're a child that's completely out of date with us now as a mature adult with a whole lot more resources at our disposal. And many times the initial response to an event may be over, and what we remember is the memory of that event. It's not the event. We revisit it like a movie. We see it again and we recreate it, and often it changes in our mind. We cherry pick which things that we're focusing on, and it becomes a habit. And once it's a habit, it has its own momentum and then it runs itself. It'll even come up in our sleep. So this one, we actually have to learn how to deconstruct habits, how to stop that momentum. And that takes quite a lot of concerted effort, but it's definitely possible to do it emotionally and also to rewire our brain. You know, it's possible to do. So this so far is what our Western psychology will say to a degree. And neurology, they're kind of dovetailing nicely these days. But Buddhism adds in another level, which is the afflictive emotions. And this is where it is universal, where there is something that when we can pinpoint, it's the same for everybody. So our distorted attitudes, beliefs, reactions, afflictive emotions, things like pride, jealousy, craving, desirous attachment, hatred, anger, all of those things. We recognize them. They're, you know, pretty much the same in every culture. There might be different expressions of it, but we all know what those experiences are. And the afflictive emotions are the direct cause of depression and anxiety. And we need to figure out for ourselves which of those afflictive emotions are the ones that are getting us. Because for one person, it might be jealousy that is the cause. For someone else, it might be pride or attachment so we can trace it through. If we don't work on the afflictive emotions part of things, we might be able to make a little bit of progress with the others, but we'll keep falling back into depression, back into anxiety. It'll keep coming up because the other ones are a little bit like the painkillers or the Band-Aids. They give us a bit of space, but if we haven't removed that root cause, it's going to come back again. And that's why taking meds can work, but sometimes it only works for a few weeks and then it wears off again. Then we have to adjust our medication, or if we change it again and they say, let's try this or let's try that, which can strike horror in anybody because we know the interminable, how many months of trial and error that is. So actually getting to what those root delusions are. So I thought actually today we could have a quick look at the most subtle and pernicious of them, which is all the ones to do with the ignorance and wrong views and things that are really, really deep in us and hard to even identify. But as we go through in the coming weeks, we'll look at the more obvious and horrible ones like attachment and anger. So Mary, does that help? What else do you have? Anything else? Any other?
No, that was a good answer. Thanks.
Anybody else have a comment about that? Does it make sense about this kind of layered approach of the causes? Okay. Yeah, so Western psychology, the kind of the blanket approach, I suppose, is, this too shall pass, that it can't last forever. And many people with lived experience of working with depression or anxiety will say, yeah, it does pass, things do change. And often that can be the thing that gives us hope, not something we read in a book or whatever, but just the lived experience of somebody else. But from a Buddhist point of view, there's so much more that we can do than just live through it, just bear it. That's just stage one. And what else I was hoping to be able to bring in this course was this kind of new approach that we've been doing here of looking at the three scopes, lower scope, middle scope, and higher scope along the Buddhist path. And there are approaches that we can take for each of these scopes when we look at how to deal with depression and anxiety. So lower scope is about just being able to bear it and keep your mind even in the face of adversity, and at least not make things worse. So there's a whole lot of practical things that we can do with that to at least not make things worse. Like, for instance, diet. And dealing with how much alcohol we consume, alcohol, sugar, all of those things that they bring a short-term benefit or high or relief, for sure. That's indisputable. But the long term, like when I was drinking, I'd drink myself to sleep, and I'd think that was the only way that I could get to sleep. But the flip side is that I couldn't stay asleep, so I'd wake up after 3 hours and that'd be it. So I still had incredible insomnia. So this short-term thing, and I could never put it together. It took me years to be able to put it together. So we start off with lower scope like that. Middle scope is about dealing with those afflictions, going to the root of it, and deconstructing those negative habits, and really dismantling all of those afflictive emotions, they're very reactive. As Venerable Robina often says, we panic and then we just, we react in whichever way. So slowing the whole process down and really beginning to deal with our mind. But the greater scope one is we change our whole attitude from this is bad to this is good, great. Now I can develop my compassion. Now I can develop my kindness because I know what it's like. Because if we've never had a migraine, we're never going to have any empathy for somebody that has a migraine. If you go to a doctor that's never had a migraine and you say, I get migraines, are they going to get it? No way. It's just not going to happen. So we can go, great, now I can develop my empathy, my compassion. This is what's going to make me a really good human being. I can take the essence of my life. I can do this for others. So that gives us enormous courage. So that's much more like, the great scope. So somewhere along the way, we'll be able to have each of those approaches as we can, as we get more practiced. Does that make sense? Comments, questions?
I didn't understand the middle scope one. Could you please amplify that?
Yeah, Abelardo. So the middle scope is about achieving liberation, isn't it? So nirvana, the complete escape from samsara, which means removing the root causes. So once you've removed the causes of suffering, you can no longer suffer. But it's the aim is kind of one's own individual liberation. So that's where all of what we call like self-care comes in. So self-care from a Buddhist point of view is what we think of as renunciation. That's the ultimate self-care, looking after oneself in a way that is going to help oneself, not just temporarily, but ultimately. So it means working on our mind, working on those root afflictions in our mind, and that way we can get real liberation, or Western psychology calls it emotional freedom. And then great scope is then when we kind of turn around and we see everybody else and we use all of our experiences for the benefit of others. Okay, so quite quickly then, let's have a look at the three baddies. So we're going through in this course, there's different ways, a taxonomy of the afflictive emotions. There's whole different ways that Buddhism kind of looks at them. I think in the largest way, there was 84,000 delusions. So we think we've got it bad now. Can you imagine? Thank goodness we don't have all of them all at once, right? So 84,000, a huge amount. How are we going to deal with each one? Tick, tick, tick. So they're kind of in sections. So some sections are mostly to do with attachment and craving. Other sections are to do all the afflictions to do with anger, hatred, frustration, belligerence, resentment, all of that family. But the main one is to do with ignorance and confusion, wrong views, all of those. And so let's just quickly have a look at those, because Mary, in terms of the how to start figuring out the afflictions, these ones we'll all have, but they'll be more apparent to us at times than others. And these are the hardest ones, or sometimes they're the hardest ones to get started with. But we can get started right now. So I've done them in terms of most wanted posters. So we'll do 3 today, just really briefly, and then as we in the coming days we'll do attachment and pride and anger, because they need a whole class on themselves. But so with ignorance, so ignorance, most wanted, can we recognize ignorance? So the most wanted posters is so that we can identify what to chuck out, what to dismantle, what is harming us and what is helping us. Because normally we make this decision on whether something feels good or feels unpleasant. And if it's unpleasant, we think it's bad and we'd want to get rid of it. And if it's pleasant, we like it and we want more of it. And this is a big mistake. This is our ignorance at play, and it catches us out. So in ignorance, in general, it's about just confusion, and mostly confusion about cause and effect, how cause and effect work. So we have, it's like through a glass darkly, you know, Shakespeare said, so we've got the dark glasses over our eyes. We cannot identify what the causes of our unhappiness are. We misidentify it. And so we spend all of this time trying to fix this or fix that, and it's just not going to work. And so one of the things, for instance, like that example I gave about our conscience, it feels bad. And if we just go with if it feels bad, it is bad, we're going to try and get rid of our conscience, which a whole lot of people do. They just shut it down. They just go, I don't care. They harden their heart. They try and drown it out to just do things to make them feel good. And shut up conscience. Well, we know it does eat away at us. And when it comes to our death time, we die with enormous regrets or fear or anger. But why do we do this? Because of our ignorance, because we just assume, because it doesn't feel so good, because our conscience is really unpleasant, that it is bad. So it's this kind of misidentification and confusion that we're talking about here. Also, grasping at a true self, thinking this is a real me, that there is a real me in here. And the terrible, terrible flip side of this is that when we feel bad about ourselves, then we think we are really bad. We have such self-loathing and guilt towards ourselves, don't we? And this also comes from ignorance. And why? Because the other part of the ignorance is we're unaware of our potential. We're unaware of our nature, and that all of these disturbing emotions are afflictions. They're not us. In a way, in the olden days, it was easier. You know, you just say you were possessed. And the great thing about that was that it's not you. So psychologically, it's actually much more useful. So that's ignorance. That's a huge one, isn't it? Deluded doubt, that's an easy one. This is unexamined doubt. So it's where we sit on the fence, where we're too frightened to look at something, where maybe we're too guilty, maybe we're just complacent, we just, oh, it's too hard, or we're in denial, no, don't want to know. So deluded doubt or unexamined doubts, attraction to conspiracy theories, just ambivalence, and just not sitting down and figuring it out. So that just, it's not, you know, it's not obviously bad, but what it does is it means we get stuck. We know we have doubt because we're stuck. If we're stuck, we have deluded doubt. But this one, if we just learn how to use our reasoning, we can do something about it. Wrong views, kernel wrong views, are when we think we're right, but actually it's a harmful view. It harms others, it harms us. And why do things harm us? Because we're out of step with reality. There's something that's askew. So they can be really extreme views, the fixed view of this is the real me. They can be just culturally inherited views, like, you know, girls don't play sport and boys don't cry. Like, there's a whole range of wrong views, and we can see how harmful they are. So these, they kind of go together, don't they? They're to do with the ignorance and the distortions in our mind and our attitudes that then color everything. So I did have some, you know, worksheet questions about this, but is there anything that's come up about these three baddies, the most wanteds, ignorance, doubt, and wrong views? What are your comments or questions? I know someone has one. Did any of you have a chance to look at the worksheet? Because it had some questions to get going on this. So the ones for ignorance, for instance, just really basically what happens when you try and do something and you find you're no good at it. So anybody, what happens when you're going to do something? You're going to, you know, learn a new recipe or a new computer program or learn to crochet or whatever, and you find you're no good at it. How do you feel? Wiley.
Yeah, I always, my first instinct is always to panic.
To panic, yeah, righto. And so what's going through your mind?
It's that control of, it's that feeling of not being in control, wanting to know that I can master something and not want to look to either myself or others that I don't know how to do something. Yeah.
And when you're trying to learn how to do something, is it usually you trying to figure it out by yourself, or are you being shown? Do you have helpers?
It's easier if I am by myself trying to figure something out, but if it's a situation where I'm on the spot, that's when I actually do the panicking. Usually I don't when it's when I'm by myself.
Yeah, I hear you. I hate rushing. So I often, if I have to do something, I'll do it late at night in my own time where I can just potter around and not panic. But also I find I get quite disoriented sometimes when people are around, that I can't actually just see what's in front of me. So, you know, we take this. So this is all a result. And so then we go, well, what are the causes of that? So part of it might be pride, that we don't want to be seen to be an idiot. Part of it might be the panic that comes from not being in control. And so we don't have that confidence to just ride with it. And that comes from just being not familiar with something. And the only way through that is to become familiar. And so, you know, you've already got a way to give yourself some space to do it by yourself. But what I've found is that I need both, because if we don't let ourselves be taught, we miss out. And I've been quite solitary, you know, a bit of an auteur. I like doing my own thing, but you can go so much further if you have a teacher. I've been a bit thick this way. And so what stops us? And I think it's that when we expect ourselves to be good at something straight away, don't we? And we also conflate that if we're no good at something, then we are no good. You know, so you do something, it stuffs up, and then we feel bad. Now, there's something very quickly that happens in there, that when it stuffs up, we take it personally, that I am a stuff up. It's interesting, isn't it? So that's this ignorance, and it comes from that grasping at a true self, a real me, which doesn't exist like that. And so we make this assumption, we've stuffed up something, therefore I am a stuff up. Whereas if you think of something that you love doing, and it usually, you know, it's a hobby, it's something that you would do for free in your own time, you like doing it. It's more like the joy of experimenting. And why? Because we haven't conflated the two things of making a mistake and being a mistake. And so when we make a mistake, we go, oh, wow, how interesting. Or, hey, that's a good idea. I could do this and la, la, la. And then a whole new thing comes out of the mistake. So I think, Wiley, maybe the shortcut for this one is to position ourselves as beginners. So just go, I'm a beginner. I don't know anything. Show me how to do it. And, you know, so they say, like, if you go and you learn a thing like go and learn ballroom dancing or a new language or an instrument or something like that, that actually the benefit goes over the entire of your life, not just that one thing when you're doing the one thing, but you know, your sleep patterns get better, you get more energy, you get more confidence generally. And it's because in those things we position ourselves as a beginner and we allow ourselves to make mistakes. So question 2 here, describe how you could cultivate curiosity and a joy in learning. So, you know, instead of going, oh no, go, how interesting, or what a good idea. And so all of that comes from remembering we are beginners and people are here to help us, not to humiliate us. They're here to help us. And if they're humiliating us, then just leave them alone. And even if things don't turn out, when something doesn't turn out, we think the whole thing is wrong, but actually it's just that one thing that didn't turn out. So here we've just been hanging our first ever art exhibition at Lungri Tongpa Centre, and it's just been heaps of fun because one, Wiley, we've had enough time. We've had like each day, we're not doing it just all on the night before, so everyone's been able to chill. But we had this whole plan of this picture here, you know, all pre-planned, and you go to do it, and of course everything changes, but you have to start with the plan, and then you put it up and you go, nah, that doesn't work. Oh, what about like this? Or then we don't have enough equipment, so we'll make do with this, and what a great idea. So only that, you can only do that if you got this idea of being a beginner and it's okay to make mistakes. What else? Who else has a question, a comment? We also had the doubt and the distorted views. Let's see. So with the distorted views, what is the view of myself and my identity based upon at the moment? So this is an interesting one because we have an idea of who we are at the moment, what it's based on. Like when someone says, you know, who are you? What do we say? So who's got a good answer for that one? What do you say when you get introduced to somebody? Or who stumbles over the answer? Who are you? What do you do? That's kind of generally the thing, isn't it? So what do you say?
I think in our culture, it's usually what your job is how everyone's so wedded to work that's the easiest way, and then where you live. In New York, you know, it's usually like what part of the city you're in and that sort of thing.
Oh, okay. So what part of the geographical, that would indicate a whole lot of things. So work's kind of two, isn't it? It's one is status and the other is because it's monetized. Because it's really interesting, if you're a volunteer, like I'm a volunteer, you have to find the worth other than how much you're paid for it. And I think that's really why people love volunteering, because you find the worth in the job. The moment you start getting paid for it, you only do up to your pay grade. Whereas volunteering, you'll go above and beyond because it is incalculable benefit. Then again, I've come across people who are volunteers that because it isn't monetized, then they just do a crap job because it's only volunteering, and they'll only do the good job if they're paid. So it's kind of interesting, isn't it? And all of that reflects on how we think of ourselves. It kind of shows what we're basing our our worth and our identity on. So in that one is question 9, what's the view of myself and my identity based upon at the moment? So that's the key to this question, that we do have whatever it is based on at the moment, but we've got to recognize that it's a temporary thing. And the problems come when we think it's a real lasting thing. Because if, you know, with our job, like if we lose our job, has anyone here ever lost a job? Yeah, so Kristen, so what happened what did you feel like when you lost the job?
It was pretty traumatic at the time, because that was after I was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia, and I had to get treatment. And this was right when COVID started and everything. And I had to get treatment, and it took a lot of time, and I couldn't go to work because I worked at a public library. So there was no way I could work with COVID. And so they fired me, not for cause, but because I had to have too much time off to get my treatment. And it was really traumatic.
Wow.
And yeah,
So
I felt really, I knew it wasn't something I had done to, you know, lose the job. It was sort of like the luck of the draw. So I didn't really feel bad about myself, but I really lost everything. And because my healthcare was tied to my work, and my health insurance was gone in the middle of this traumatic disease. So it was really awful.
yeah, that's just everything cascading down all at once. Yeah. And so when you have the least amount of energy when you're sick, all the worst things happen at the same time. Isn't that the way? It's just, yes, I can't even imagine how traumatic. So, but at least, Kristen, what you're saying is that you didn't take it personally, emotionally, because often what can happen is if we're sacked or we lose our job, we feel worthless. We take it on personally. But maybe because everything was so incredibly overtly traumatic, it was clear. You know, whereas if we kind of just have a job and then someone else is passed over, you know, we're passed over for a promotion, or you know, we're just sacked because we got old or whatever it is, there's a whole lot more in it that we read into it.
Yeah, so now I'm 59 right now, and I basically have to go get another job. So what you're saying right now is what I'm going through. I'm like, I'm almost 60 years old and I'm supposed to get a job out there. It's like, so it's weird. I'm going through all of that sort of self-worth thing. Like, I'm too old to get a cool job. There aren't that many great jobs here anyway in Florida. So, but anyway, yeah, it's that self-worth thing and the aging thing, and you know.
Yeah, so if we look at it like, so where it's at the moment. So you can even do like the 2 columns. So yeah, there's the aging thing and, you know, sickness or lack of energy, those kind of things, but they're finite things. On the other column is the life experience, the, you know, the loyalty, the ethics, the proven track record, all of those things. And they too are at the moment, but we can develop them. So part of this of our identity is thinking to remember, yeah, it's at the moment, so it's a temporary thing and it will always change. But the other little life hack is, imagine if your best friend, your great aunt, your guru, your teacher, if they were writing your reference, what would they say about you? And you write that down. Because that'll be much more honest. And I mean, it's kind of ironic because you pretty much have to lie in resumes and all of those kinds of things, but it can always be hooked to the truth. You can always be really specific and hook it to, these are actually my qualities, and here's some examples. And I'm pretty sure people respond to authenticity. But you've got to write it not as you. But the great thing about having, you know, that there is no real, you know, real me in there, graspable like that, is that you can just switch into a different persona, your great aunt, your guru, your teacher, and write it from there. So Mary LaRosa, social media asks us to reflect upon our profile, define ourselves and present ourselves. That's right. And while we do it, while we're panicked or under the sway of the worldly concerns, so the short-term concerns and the afflictive emotions, it just becomes this rat race, doesn't it? But actually reading this, where we're asked to define ourselves and present ourselves, what if we went, well, all right, I will. I'm a potential Buddha with no inherent self, aiming to be of benefit to every single sentient being, including everyone who sees this newsfeed. Now, what if you put that in your status? Because you can't be what you can't see, so put it out there, say it, describe it, write it exactly how you want to. So at least if we have our virtual selves, instead of our virtual selves all to do with attachment and pride and wanting, you know, praise and wanting to look differently than how we are, let's use this virtual self to build ourselves a bodhisattva. Why not? I mean, you know, Wiley, it's great, isn't it? Like on social media, even though we are quite trigger happy, we do have all the time in the world. We can sit back and we can plan this. So why not build your bodhisattva self and put it on social media and be that one? You know, be like Lama Zopa Rinpoche, or be like His Holiness, or be like B. Alan Wallace, or be like Rabina, be like Venerable Rabina. This is our experimental ground. You know, the virtual world is so wonderful like that, the possibilities that we have, because it takes in, you know, the power of like vision boards, you know, vision boards and painting a bright future. You know, we've all heard of those, and actually they're really powerful. I just had a friend tell me about hers this week. So she said she's in her late 50s, and when she was 16, she was living housing commission flats, dropped out of school, but somewhere along the line she'd done this vision board. She put pictures of what she wanted to achieve: hiking in the Himalayas, getting a good job, getting an education. You know, she had the professor hat, all these different things. She just stuck them all up there, all the things that she wanted, just a 16-year-old yearning. And she said every single one of those things has happened to her. She went hiking in the Himalayas, she went to Laudo, she met Buddhism, she got an education, you know, as a mature age student, she got a great job, all of these things, everything that was there, just from gluing stuff from a magazine. So the power of visualizing things, it's huge. We so underestimate it. So instead of just having it by, oh, I want all the money, we can do it. Social media is like our vision board for becoming a bodhisattva. You put on everything right to the nitty-gritty of what you want to be, how you want to be. So Mary La Rosa, thank you. That was a great thing to put in there. What else? Anything about deluded doubt? Anyone here got anything happens about, do you get caught out by doubt?
I guess I have a doubt that things will change because things seem to happen slowly. Like you don't have like a turnaround like overnight. It takes time.
Yes, it takes concerted effort and bit by bit by bit, and then suddenly, boom, things change. So maybe because we're so distracted all the time, we just see the boom, the big change, or we get caught out when things change and we're not so aware of what's happening underneath behind the scenes. So many times, you know, Venerable Rabino has said, we don't even know we have stress or anxiety or depression until the wheels fall off. And it's like we've been driving along in the car and the oil light's gone on and we've gone, yeah, later. And then everything blows up. And then we go, oh my God, something's wrong. So, I mean, such a fantastic analogy that we don't do anything until the wheels fall off. But actually, just putting in time for maintenance, you know, get the car serviced, all of those things, maybe doing some nice spicky details on it, like the day to day, little bit by little bit each day. It doesn't look that dramatic, but the wheels won't fall off. So that's one thing. And then if we do, like I just remember, for instance, when I was learning to crochet, what I loved about this was, you know, there's very little self-worth that you can get from crochet. Like, you're not a good or a bad person, whether you can crochet or not. So it's a really neutral thing. And in the scheme of things, if I ended up being a crap crocheter, it wasn't going to matter. But so I learned to crochet about 5 or 6 years ago now. And I knew for the first few months that I'd be hopeless at it. And so I just, you know, I was sitting there with my tongue sticking out the corner of my mouth and I was all uncoordinated and my hands would seize up and I'd feel like I had steam coming out my ears because I couldn't figure out how to do it. And my tension was all over the place. And you just notice it and you just go, okay, well, incremental progress. And the first thing I made, it was ugly. I had no idea about color combinations. It was just from start to finish disgusting. Some of the squares were this big, some of them were all loopy and this big. Like, I should have kept it actually. But in my mind, first, number one thing was I had an image of what I wanted to achieve. So if you just focus on how horrible or difficult something is, you'll quickly stop it. But if you remember what you want to achieve, you'll get through. That's number one. The other one was that I knew that that everyone said it takes you X amount of months to get your tension right. And it's a milestone. So you go and everything's all over the place. And then one day, just from practice, you get your tension right. And you know, I'm a 3/4 tight crocheter, and that's it. And you can calibrate it. You can tell just in a minute detail when you're getting a bit tired and things get loose. You kind of tighten it up a bit. When you're really, really tense and everything's so rock hard that you haven't made a nice square, you've made a frisbee. You can tell and you can adjust. And this is what happens in meditation. You're all over the show for ages, but you've got this idea of what you're aiming for. And then one day you can calibrate it. And it is a milestone. You actually achieve that and then you can do it. But where did it come from? All those months of practice. So we've just got to be willing to do the months of being hopeless at it and stuffing up and practicing by remembering what we're aiming at.
So, practically speaking, what is it that we're doing every day to combat anxiety and depression? Like, what are we working with? Like, if saying for ignorance, like, what would be the day-to-day solution for ignorance? Besides wisdom.
The first thing to start with is breathing meditation, boring old breathing meditation, because what the practice of that is to put the space in between all of the thoughts and feelings. So physical sensations, emotional sensations, mental experiences, they arise, and we put a space between them, that experience arising in our mind and us reacting. So we stop being reactive. We've got to put a space. So watching the breath is how to put the space in between the experiences and the turmoil that comes up and responding in panic. You know, Venerable Rabina so well talks about this, how we panic. So why do we panic? Because there's no space. We react straight away. So the breathing meditation is practicing putting in the space, even if it's a nanosecond. And then slowly the space might be 1 second. And believe me, that's a long time. Then it might be 3 seconds. You know, in a year, maybe you might just be able to calibrate it. You're not quite engaging in it for up to 10 minutes. And that will have a huge effect. It's transferable to the rest of our life. So to start with, and especially this week, that's the thing. Abelardo.
Thank you. Getting back to your question about the doubts, I was reviewing my answers to the worksheet in February, and I realized how much I've been able to progress during these 6 months, more or less. Because my afflictive doubts in February had to do with two things. One, dealing with this belief that I'm a solid self, you know, and going through the 5 acceptances of the stage of life I'm in. I became 74 2 days ago, actually. So you know, I've been dealing with old age, getting sick, facing death, and letting go of all things that are dear, and accepting my karma and, you know, results. Yeah. One of the things that I've been able to do, and that was also very much present, related to my fears of death. That was the strongest thing. And so one thing that I've been practicing these months has been the practice of the 6 bardos, based on the teachings of Padmasambhava that were conveyed through the Kirtan Karma Singpa. And so the first is the what you just described right now about the bardo of this life, and particularly how one can become aware of how through thought one creates new karmas, and learn to appreciate those moments of silence. And then I've been, you know, the second is that working on with the bardos of dreams, the dream states, and the lucid dreaming and illusory body.
Yeah, getting more subtle. Yeah. But even that, I mean, even the first one, yeah, it's really profound. And I mean, it's taken me years to even notice, because I just thought, oh, breathing meditation, how boring. But it just shows I'm a little bit thick, because there's a purpose for it, but I need to know the purpose beforehand. But Abelardo, you also said about doing the worksheets, and I'm so glad you did, and that you can look over, because there's something in being able to look, even like from February to now, half a year, and there is concrete proof of your change and your development. And it's from actually capturing it in words. You have to write it down. That has an effect on us, because words are actually like a subtle body, aren't they? They're the Sambhogakaya. So they put things into a form. It helps us see where we've been, where we're going. It gives us a momentum, rather than everything just existing in amorphous potential. So I'm so happy to hear that you did the worksheets, and I'd like you to keep doing them. Do another lot and see how they change.
There's a second area of doubt that I evaluated myself on, that had to do with, well, anyway, the result of the first one, just to complete that very quickly, is that I now realize that there's a continuity of pure consciousness, and that what I can experience now and you know, develop now is what will continue. And so I'm just released many fears and things to do with death, you know, physical death, because I don't believe death really exists, you know, from that deeper point of view.
Yeah, from an ultimate point of view. Yep, you're right. Yep.
The second area has to do with before I believed myself to be special in some way. And, you know, it was like pride, kind of pride, something I developed for all my life. It's sort of like a narcissistic side of myself. And I become so aware, though, this period of the suffering in the world and the critical period that we're in, you know, and so I'm trying to transmute this now into divine pride in a more like a bodhisattva type of motivation. Yeah.
Yeah. So probably next week we're going to look at how we can do that, how we can really put that into place, of the difference between like pride that alienates us or is arrogance, and pride of really being, so not afflictive pride, but positive pride, because we need that, because along with that comes courage. So we're going to go more in depth into that next week, Abelardo. And you've given me a wonderful segue into my last slide and the meditation just to end for today, which is about the nature of our mind being naturally pure. So the just to kind of revisit what we looked at in the last course, that when we're talking about our mind, it's not just brain, it's not just thoughts, but from Buddhist psychology point of view, mind is our internal experience, everything that's in our experience. So all of our thoughts, all of our emotions and feelings, sense perceptions, including, you know, what's chemically happening in our body, what comes in through, you know, how our senses, where our minds are often drawn outwards by our senses, our instincts, our memories. So when we talk about mind, we're talking about the entire experience. And then the thing is, what we don't realize, that our nature, the nature of our mind, is clean and clear, like the sky. But if we're just looking at those clouds, and if there's a whole lot of clouds, or if there's a cyclone Ian happening inside us as well as outside of us, we are going to be disconnected from that purity. We're not even going to believe it. We will have no experience of it, even though it's there all the time. So the thing to remind ourselves again and again with words like a bumper sticker, that our afflictive emotions are not us. The clouds are not one with the sky. They can be removed. All of our disturbances, all of those root causes of you know, suffering and problems, they're not us. They're afflictions. They're toxicity, inner toxicity. And we can remove them. And first off, we've got to stop pumping more in. So this is the kind of stop making things worse. And that's largely what this course is about, how to stop pumping more things in. So rather than just have this as a theory, in the last little few minutes left, I wanted to do this as a meditation, because often when we think about, oh yeah, the nature of my mind is clear and pure, but all of the suffering and the confusion and everything, that's the inner toxicity. Okay, so we remove that inner toxicity, but often what we do, and just like we do with smokestacks, is we don't stop pumping things in, we just colorize the smoke so it becomes invisible. So you might have seen smokestacks that on the horizon it looks like nothing's coming out of them, but you put kind of glasses on, like sunglasses or blue blockers, and you see the smoke pumping out. So what they've done is they just made the smoke invisible. And that's usually what we do with our problems. We just try to get rid of the problem. We try to get rid of the smoke. But that's not the solution. The solution is to stop the cause of the smoke, to stop pumping more in. The smoke is good in that it shows us what's wrong. Just like our problems, our suffering, they show us they're a result of something, and they show us exactly where to look, exactly where the smokestacks are. So let's just have a short meditation in the time that we have left. It's in your notes of Mind Like the Sky. And we're going to start where we are, which is with a few smokestacks there, pumping out various things: craving, pride, doubt, panic. We don't even know where those smokestacks are, but we know from looking at the smoke. There's the plume, there's the problem. So let's just set our motivation that we're doing this meditation for our own self-care, but also so we can become a really good influence in the world, and so that ultimately we can help everyone. We can stop all the suffering that we see around us and find so unbearable. We can do this by working very deeply with our own mind. So sitting comfortably, bring your attention again to the breath, the rolling rhythm of the breathing. You can even just say to yourself, breathing in, breathing out, or in and out, just to anchor your focus to the breath. Become aware of the breath. And if there are any feelings or thoughts that arise, experience them like clouds that arise, manifest in the sky, and then dissolve on their own. So usually if a thought or a feeling arises, we jump right in. But just become aware of the sensation. The sensation of a thought, the sensation of a feeling. And without jumping in, just note what today's internal weather is like. So without judging it, or without getting excited or demoralized, just note the internal environment of your mind today. Just describe whether the clouds are covering everything, whether they're intermittent, the level of agitation or no agitation, of peacefulness, and recognizing that all of this experience happens in the limitless expanse of the sky. And above the cloud level, the sky remains clear, boundless, spacious. And so gently broaden your field of attention to the space of awareness itself, in which you perceive your breath, in which any thoughts or sensations arise, so that any experience that arises in the mind, broaden your awareness to not focus on that experience, but the feeling of awareness. the awareness itself that perceives the breath. Your mind like a huge empty sky of spacious awareness. Any thought that arises, become aware of the awareness of the thought. Just like any cloud that manifests in the sky, become aware of the sky around it and let it naturally dissolve. We so habitually identify with those clouds, with those thoughts and those feelings. We dive right in. We lose all sense of the vastness of the sky. We lose sense of our clear, spacious, knowing mind. But no matter how large the storm, it arises in that spaciousness. Feel that spaciousness, how it has no boundary, no edge. And then even if you do find yourself involved in those clouds, diving into those thoughts or feelings, we too can use this, our experience of distraction, to generate patience and compassion. That everyone is distracted, everyone panics. It is so rare to have the experience of that spacious mind. Poor sentient beings, poor humans. So even if you get distracted, you can remember, oh, poor sentient beings. Just like me, they get overwhelmed. So recognize that this is the nature of your mind, this infinite clarity and spaciousness. We have all the resources within our mind that we need to clarify our mind, to remove that toxicity. We can dismantle those factories of negative emotions. We can return the sky to its natural clarity. We don't need to put anything in. We just take away all of that toxicity. And this is the radical proposition of Buddhist psychology, returning to our natural state. And on a day-to-day level while we're out in the world, beholden to the weather, we have the protection of the Dharma, of mind training, like an umbrella that protects us from that rain of misfortune. That our mind can become clear in amongst it all. We can protect our mind from further harm. We can weather the storm. So we can just gently bring our focus back and dedicate the merits of today with this understanding of the nature of our mind and this experience that even if we can't see up above the clouds, we know it's clear, infinite space above. And we can dedicate that due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. And the Bodhicitta verses, may the supreme jewel Bodhicitta, not yet born, arise and grow, and may that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings abide, may I too remain to dispel the sorrows of the world. So hopefully that meditation put a new slant on our dedication prayers. So today we've covered a little bit about the causes of depression and anxiety, that checklist going from the easy to the most profound. We've kind of learned how our experience of problems is actually our way out of it. Recognizing where those smokestacks and the smoke is our first step. And we've had a look at the deepest of the root delusions, ignorance and doubt, how it makes us stuck, and the wrong views that kind of compound the matters. But mostly, the most important point is this getting an experience of that ultimately pure nature of the mind, that no negativities can ever ruin or break the nature, that clarity of the mind. And not only that, they can be removed. So if you can, do that mind like the sky meditation this week and have a look at the worksheets. And if you've got the worksheets from last week, just put them aside, do these ones afresh. And at the end of the course, we'll compare them. And so next week, we'll have a look at identity and self-worth. And if you want to kind of watch class 2 of the video, that'd be great. And otherwise, thank you so much for your attendance and tolerance. I know I've gone over. I'll try be better next time. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Miffi.
Miffi.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
See
Thank
you all
you,
next
everyone.
week.